nation.
Can-Am's last dying ember.
More kindling for the NASCAR cookout.
And dirt car enthusiasm spreads like wildfire.
This and more next on Speed Week.
Speed Week is brought to you by VF Goodrich TA Radials, built for you to take on the road. And by Dodge, a performance revolution, an American revolution.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Speed Week. I'm Larry Newber.
And I'm Bob Jenkins. Although there were numerous motorsports events in the U.S. last weekend, we begin this week's Speed Week with reports on several events in Canada.
The alumni of Jack Roush's very successful Trans Am team splintered off to form their own this year. Well, the score is now 5-2. They each field 3 cars, and it has made the series highly competitive. The two teams had claimed 6 of the first 7 qualifying positions last week at Motorsports. Only Elliott Forbes Robinson and his very capable 6-cylinder Buick intervened. Protofab Mercur's Pete Halsmer wrestled the pole, but was pit-side by the first lap with serious vibrations. Pruitt for Roush and Dallenbach Protofab were in a serious fence for the lead. Greg Pickett, Protofab, and Chris Neifel, Roush, sniping at each other for third. Wally led much of this race. He's led more laps this season than anybody until a late caution. Pruitt will ray-haul by. This was only the Roush Motorcraft team's second win. The Alumni Club has 5, but Roush and Company have 11 top 3s, Protofab 8. Sounds like a season tie to me, but Dallenbach leads driver's points. Hey, Scott, without that yellow, did you have him?
Oh, I think so. I was laying back, taking care of the tires, because, you know, with the 8-cylinder, we have to be real careful with the tires. And the Capri was running super. The Roush guys did a super job putting it together. I don't think I would have had a problem.
Well, we'll never know. But he was running hard, and we're all running hard. And, you know, that yellow just was unfortunate for me.
Trans Am next year apparently will allow 4-wheel drive cars, clearing the way for the Audi Quattros and Porsche 961s. The turbo 4-cylinder Toyota Celica will also be approved for 1987, it is said. And the Trans Am schedule may include Long Beach and Laguna Seca.
The SCCA's Can-Am Series began back in 1966 with a win by John Surtees at Saint-Jovite in Canada. The final event, at least under SCCA sanction, was at Mosport. Although there will be another Can-Am race this year in Oklahoma, this was the last under SCCA banners. Bill Tempero led a few laps, but the star of the race was the pole sitter, 17-year-old Paul Tracy. His name may sound familiar because he won a Formula 2000 race at San Air recently. He was driving for Horst Kroll, who has more Can-Am starts than any other driver, but Horst was looking for his first championship. His hopes were dimmed Saturday when he and Tracy collided in practice. Tracy took advantage of Tempero's bad clutch with 2 laps to go and won. Kroll, however, finished second and added his name to the list of Can-Am champions. Patrick Tambay, Jackie Ickx, Mark Donohue, Peter Revson. Will the Can-Am continue without SCCA backing?
From the crowd that has been calling me and writing me, the way they enjoy the Can-Am cars, it's got to go on, and I'm going to make my best to make it go, and everybody is committed, and you will see us back next year for sure, I guarantee you.
2 supporting events at Mosport, a couple of series getting significant American exposure this year. First, the Porsche Challenge. Richard, who else? Spinard on pole, but lost out to one of 86's emerging stars, Scott Goodyear, his 3rd win. But with 1 test to go, Spinard still leads the championship. The open wheel Formula 2000 has been a second Spinard playground this year, but another one of those new kids on the block made him sweat this one out. That's Paul Tracy again. Says he's going to Europe next year, getting some more pub.
Coming up, the crush for Winston points continues.
And seeking modified markers is a crushing experience. Stay with us.
The tight Winston Cup points battle didn't change much after Sunday's Delaware 500 at Dover because the points leaders didn't fare too well. Mark Allen has details.
The 38-car field broke in a new track surface but started behind the same old front row of Jeff Bodine and Tim Richmond in the 500-lap survival test. In the Winston Cup Championship chase, the top trio was tormented by Lady Luck. 33 laps in, Richmond's summer-long 4-leaf Clover wilted when a cut tire allowed the turn 2 wall to rearrange all 4 corners of his racer. Repairs on the number 2 points car took more than an hour and 170 some laps, but permitted Richmond time to console the number 3 points man, Darrell Waltrip, during transmission repairs, which took 15 agonizing laps. Meanwhile, points leader Dale Earnhardt was biding his time in the top 5, looking forward to padding his margin. But a cut tire took care of that dream 335 laps in and forced the battered Chevy to the garage for 65 laps. Few top cars escaped Dover's Monster Mile. Harry Gant's luckless streak was extended by a lapped car which caused this meeting with the wall. Bill Elliott seemed capable of winning, but his motor wasn't up to the task. Neither was Bodine's. The pole sitter was out after 260 laps. Bobby Allison made a lengthy visit to the crowded garage with rear-end troubles. Terry Labonte was contending when his motor expired in the final 100 laps. And Rusty Wallace had been running with the leaders until this late race waltz from a cut tire. Ricky Rudd drove the car with the race setup that was gentlest on tires and was never seriously challenged over the final 100 laps en route to his first super speedway win in an 11-year Winston Cup career. Earnhardt and Richmond nursed their crippled machines in 21st and 26th, respectively. Waltrip a spirited 14th despite an ailing back. With the wet and weary survivors in victory lane, this is Mark Allen reporting.
One of Grand National's front-runners who hadn't won since back-to-back scores in March, well, he finally victored again. 11 different pilots have won in this competitive series. Nobody stringing together laurel crowns, but as usual, Jack Ingram has won the most. Southerner Kenny Burks is the first casualty on this junket north for the Rebels. Larry Pearson next, a curious year. Despite no wins, he recently has been second in points. Narrowly averts the proverbial disaster here. They don't call Jack Ingram the Iron Man for nothing. When the old iron needs working on, Jack proves his willingness. Dale Jarrett, one of the season's winners, started second, but no chance today. And late Morgan Shepherd begins to pick up steam high around Brett Bodine. He'll finish third. Morgan's the one, by the way, who had those 2 March wins. Now around Tommy Houston, and that's L.D. Ottinger trying to follow. He'll be fourth. Who agitated Morgan? Houston never did let go, though. He made Morgan toil right up to the stripe. And for Shepherd, this is very deserving. He's led many only to have it end in the pits. But this one is in victory lane.
5-time NASCAR Grand National champion and current points leader Jack Ingram has been fined and suspended indefinitely by NASCAR and faces criminal charges of assaulting a police officer and disorderly conduct. This following an alleged bumping incident and fight that occurred during a race Sunday at New Asheville Speedway in North Carolina. Ronnie Presley, whom Ingram allegedly bumped intentionally, was admitted to a Nashville hospital. But Jack says the bumping was not intentional.
We spun between the turns 3 and 4, and the entrance to pit road is right in the 4th turn. And we were both headed the wrong direction on the speedway after we spun. Well, I backed around the speedway the direction that you race. At about the entrance or beyond the entrance to pit road. And I tried to get this car down pit road, and I put it in gear and raced the motor and let the clutch out and was going to turn to the right, and it wouldn't turn to the right. There apparently was something bad wrong with the right front suspension on it. And the next thing I knowed, I'd hit this car head on. And at the time that I hit the car, I didn't know who it was even.
Jack says he will appeal the NASCAR penalty in hopes of being able to compete the rest of this year and win the championship. The criminal charges stem from a fight that occurred at Ingram's truck after the race. The event was won, by the way, by Ronnie Presley's cousin, Robert.
Some other weekend results. Terry Pearson won an ARCA race at Owasso, Michigan. Ray Gus Jr. checkered the USAC late model event on the mile at Springfield, Illinois. Joe Shear won the ARTCO championship over Butch Miller. Joe Kosiski of Omaha is the 1986 Winston Racing Series champion. Now that's determined by comparing the best 30 finishes of 5 regional champs.
Open wheel veteran Rich Vogler will try stock car racing for the first time Sunday in an ASA race in Indianapolis. And Eddie Lanier, who has built engines for Harry Gant and Junior Johnson, has been hired by Kenny Bernstein for his Winston Cup effort. The fall foliage is beginning to show off in the Poconos. That means the season for the NASCAR Modified Race of Champions on the 3/4-mile oval at Pocono International. Race fans continue to remember the late Richie Evans and his orange number 61 symbolically on the pole. Number 5, Charlie Jarzambek led number 69, Brian Ross, and others early. Yellows for this pileup in turn number 3, and for this spin by Billy Colton interrupted the action and allowed pit stops. Greg Sachs started 40th, spun, but came back to record a 4th place finish. Mike McLaughlin ran toward the front all race, but got up on the first turn wall and nearly went over. George Kent outclassed the field in this one, beating Jamie Tomeno and Jimmy Spencer. Last week in our NASCAR Modified Report, we told you Bob Park may have had help in his spin at Thompson, Connecticut from Brett Bodine. Well, Brett was not driving that other car. It was being driven by Greg Sachs.
Cam 2 DIRT Modified Series in full swing in the Northeast. After a season of races at home tracks, more points available in a series of 10 championship races here at year's end. The year's big winners here, 27-time winner Brett Hearn, who doesn't run for points, and Bob McCready, 24 scores. One of the best, Jack Johnson, is upside down here, landing on Ken Tremont, another front runner, but this, the 5th of those 10 races, will go to the veteran Tommy Corellis. Charlie Rudolph leads, and 4 are clustered at the top within a race win, 100 points.
When we return, the spotlight sweeps to open wheels.
From 100 to 500 in Indianapolis to the latest from Indy cars and Formula One. Stay with us.
You can't help but become a little nostalgic when you attend the Hoosier 100 dirt car race at the Indiana State Fairgrounds. Billy Englehart's bandana kind of takes you back to the days of Bryan, Ward, and Foyt. An effort to prepare a multi-groove track failed. Huge ruts in the first and second turns forced most to qualify on the rail. Others ventured up on top but found the going rough. Several drivers, including Chuck Gurney, came down for a closer examination before going out. Jack Hewitt came into this race undefeated on dirt this year. He had the championship all but wrapped up. Rick Hood, last year's Silver Crown champion, was among the hopefuls. 32 started this 34th annual grind on the mile dirt. At the green, Hewitt from outside row 2 starting position grabbed the lead.
Well, I just took it in a little bit deeper and braked a little bit harder, and once I actually got in front and got her a little bit sideways, they kind of had to wait for me, and early in the race, I figured everybody's brakes was working pretty good.
After only 2 laps, the first stoppage, Johnny Parsons flips after a tangle with Steve Butler. With Butler out, Hewitt clinches the Silver Crown title. A restart, then after only 4 more circuits, a holocaust that looked more serious than it was. A fuel cell split, setting the canvas and grass on fire in turn 3. Warren Mockler and Andy Hillenberg were released after hospital observation. Hewitt led all 100 laps, in fact lapped all but second place Larry Rice. Jack, who hadn't won a Silver Crown race until this year, won all 5 on dirt in '86.
May's IndyCar Classic is not the only 500 in Indianapolis. The Midget 500, 33 for 500 laps, a 1/5 mile. Young Ted Hines, his father also in this race, picked a good night for his year's best performance. Qualified pole, led early and will finish second. Less than 15 minutes in, it will go on for 2.5 hours. Another son, Roger McCluskey Jr., bounced off Dwayne Sandy and over. The traffic unlike anywhere else in racing. And to flag it well, control of at least 3 flags is mandatory, as Vic Lipke shows us. Steve Latshaw in black will lead the most laps, 276. A local, Ron Dink Glidden, is headed for a smooth 4th and gets the most positions improved award, started 26. A pit stop is normal, the driver exiting during refueling. Here, Indy's Potter's in strength. Kevin gets out, David gets in, and older bro Tracy, who started it all, is directing in his Gallus Coors Indy pit suit. He was also on hand to drive if necessary. They finished 3rd. Here's how the big 3 were eliminated. Kenyon locked horns with Don Carter Jr. from the Woom Group. Rich Vogler had machine problems, and Mac McClellan zapped by Glidden in this little set 2. And when the long-leading Latshaw tossed a fuel pump with just 14 to go, Tom Bigelow, once 5 laps down, received and won for the 2nd year in a row.
IMSA is at Watkins Glen this weekend. Jan Lammers will join Elliott Forbes Robinson in the Nissan GTP car. The 8-cylinder Cosworth Ford Probe will probably be handled by Tom Gloy and Pete Halsmer. Lynn St. James and GTP newcomer Scott Pruitt are expected to drive the 4-cylinder.
Tyler Alexander, now with the Haas Formula One team, is said to be considering joining the Haas IndyCar effort. Porsche has confirmed it will develop an engine for the Indy 500, and Swift, builder of Sports 2000 cars, may be building an Indy car for 1987.
An important Formula One meeting is scheduled in Paris October 3rd. FISA President Jean-Marie Ballastre says the meeting could change the face of Grand Prix racing. Pirelli has withdrawn as a supplier of Formula One tires, and former Formula One driver Mark Suhr, injured in a rally crash earlier this year, has retired.
In our next segment, the tall timber is felled and drags,
while pro ralliers can't see the forest for the trees.
For the most part, last week's NHRA finals at Reading were chock full of surprises. Although recently there have been so many, I guess nothing is surprising anymore. Pro Stock Finals. On the left, just a 2-year pro who's never been to the finals before. Line up against Bruce Allen in the rear and Morrison world beater. But despite those odds, Don Beverly triumphs in that first ever final round appearance. The view that Kenny Bernstein, unstoppable a year ago, has been seeing for the last month. Nose and front tires of Mark Oswald. Well, nothing changes. Kenny's a bit off his normal perfect line, but tire shake is so bad he has no vision. And Mark has another win. Talk about eye-catching noses. Yup, Don Garlett's the Streamliner philosophy. The design has undergone a couple of changes since the beginning, but today there's a problem with the engine. And Dick LaHaye and crew chief daughter Kim claim victory.
The International Hot Rod Association will not receive financial backing from R.J. Reynolds Tobacco next year. IHRA says it will give several companies, including Motorcraft, a chance to take up the slack. California promoter Chuck Foster has announced plans for a $1 million winner-take-all drag race the first weekend of November at Glen Helen Park, now under construction in Southern California. And the favored Audi Quattro of John Buffum was outdistanced by the underpowered Mazda of Rod Millen in the 5th SCCA Pro Rally event of 1986. This 1986 RX-7, designed by Super V, IMSA, and IndyCar designer Dave Bruns, gives up about 150 horsepower to Buffum's Quattro, but John needs only another second-place finish this year to clinch his 10th rally title. Rod lost the first 2 time stages along with his lead position on the road, but when he began to drop back to second, he began winning stages. Rod won 11, Buffum took 6, and they tied on 1. John Crawford in the Dodge Omni took his second consecutive production class win. He's solidly in the points lead in that class, and so is Dodge. Doug Shepard in his Dodge Turbo Shelby won his 16th consecutive event in the production GT class and clinched the manufacturer's championship in that division.
Kenny Bernstein's office is probably a little different from yours. That's the subject of this week's Bernstein File, brought to you by Budweiser.
When you get up on Monday morning and go to your office, you obviously feel pretty good about your seat. So do I in my office in the Budweiser King cockpit. It's a simple office, really. But the first thing you see is the difference in the steering wheel. A butterfly type steering wheel, not a round steering wheel, made to turn easy with very easy movements, not big radical movements. These 2 buttons are also very important. The one on the left is to shift the transmission, which we shift 1 time from low to high. The button on the right is for a fuel mixture, to lean and enrich the mixture as you're going down the racetrack. On the left-hand side, you'll have the fuel shut-off. Very important. We don't have a key. There's no switches. This is what can kill the engine or make it go. The gauges are simple. Oil pressure gauge, water temperature gauge, and an air gauge. Obviously, there's an accelerator on the right-hand side, and the big difference is in the brake. We don't have a foot brake, as you do in your car, a hand brake. This little valve right here is to open the fire extinguisher bottle if it's needed by the driver only. And the last thing we have is a mechanism that puts the car in forward and reverse, down between my legs. I'm Kenny Bernstein.
Now here's this week's trivia question. Of the following drivers, who has the most SCCA Can-Am career victories? A. Rick Miskiewicz, B. Bruce McLaren, C. Al Holbert, D. Patrick Tambay, or E. Dennis Holm? I'll have the answer in a moment. Here's the answer to this week's trivia question. Last year's champ Miskiewicz had only 3. As a builder, McLaren had the most, 43, but as a driver, only 9. Holbert won 10 times in these GTP-type cars, and Tambay checkered 12, once 11 in a row that he entered. But E, 2-time king Dennis Holm, had the most, 22.
The Mickey Thompson Series runs on more different surfaces than any. Last week in California, well, they found still yet another kind. Orange County Show Fairgrounds, 7th in the 8th-race Mickey Thompson Off-Road Grand Prix Series. An emerging star fostered here in one class, 17-year-old Rob Gordon. He's a hometowner, but also scored the Frontier 500 last week. Grand National Trucks, the headliners, where New Zealand's Steve Millen started first, ended there, and it also means the Drivers' Championship. In the race, a controversial move down on the inside. That's Glenn Harris. From this angle, he looks like he has the line, but officials docked him 5 positions and probation. In the very next corner, John Swift returned the favor, but no penalty. More typical group therapy. 3rd and 4th running Ivan Stewart and Jeff Huber counsel each other. And Roger Mears had a night of independent study, viewing things from all angles. This happened twice. But Millen will win for the 4th time in 7 races. He's won now on dirt, concrete, and this half blacktop, half infield dirt.
Next week on Speed Week, Formula One in Portugal, which, by the way, can be seen here on ESPN at 5 o'clock Sunday afternoon, plus Winston Cup at Martinsville and Indy cars at Road America. I'm Bob Jenkins.
And I'm Larry Newber. We'll see you next week on Speed Week and leave you this week with more from the Indy Midget 500.
Speed Week has been brought to you by B.F. Goodrich TA Radials, built for you to take on the road. And by Busch Beer, the beer with a taste as smooth as its name.